Hello, Oklahoma Sooners fans, college football fans. Welcome into Oklahoma at the voice of college football. This is the Oklahoma Sooners live call-in show. So we will have that call-in line. It is actually open. So feel free to call in at any point during the show, and we will try to get to your call as soon as possible. Of course, I will be joined here in just a moment by a good friend of mine, Parker Thune, here in, like I said, just a moment. But anyways, welcome into Oklahoma Sooners Live, our call-in show, also live on YouTube and for the time being on X. Just as a reminder to everybody, around 7:15 is when we are going to cut off the live stream and completely drop the live stream over on the X platform. So if you're watching on X, we appreciate you for seeing this, for viewing this, watching it. If you want to keep on watching along with us, we're going to talk about Oklahoma fall camp, recruiting, so much more. Along with Parker Thune here in just a moment. Jump over to our YouTube channel. If you don't know who we are, just Oklahoma VOCFB, search that on YouTube. Jump over to that YouTube stream. Like I said, the X live stream will be cut off around 7:15. But as always, for everybody who is watching on YouTube, jump in that live chat. We will get to all the live chats that we can. If you give a super chat or any kind of donations, those chats will be read on the show tonight. Of course, start by hitting that like button, hit that subscribe button, and then, of course, follow the voice of college football on social media, and as well as giving a 5-star review on all podcast platforms, whether you listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcasts. That would be greatly appreciated. Anyways, we're going to get into it. Like I said, we're going to get into talking a little bit about the fall camp and recruiting, so much more. But first, without further ado, I do have a special guest, a good friend of mine, the owner and one of the greats over at OU Insider. I've got Parker Thune. Parker, thank you so much for taking some time to join me here tonight.
Absolutely, man. Can you hear me okay? See me okay? Everything good?
Yeah, everything's good on my end. Yeah.
Beautiful.
I will let you know I'm along with a few of the Oklahoma Sooners in concussion protocol. So bear with me. If these questions aren't making sense tonight, just hit me again and I'll try to repeat it.
If you don't mind my asking, how did you suffer a concussion?
So obviously, as you know, I'm an electrician by trade, going out there in the field and probably doing work that I didn't even have to be doing myself, but driving in a ground rod, that T-post driver came back, smacked me in the head, ended up having to get, I was told it was going to be 7 stitches or 7 staples. And instead, I guess my skin was healthy enough where 3 did it. And so got to be thankful where I can take them, where I got to count the blessings where I can take them anyways.
So did you get stitches or staples?
Staples is what it was.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
I've never had staples. I have had stitches once. I had 14 of them in my right hand. That's the only time I've ever had to deal with them.
Yeah, they're right above where my headband is for my headphones. Had kind of like place that back in the right position tonight because it's a little soft. It just happened yesterday. But no, anyways, I'm excited to get into it with you, man.
Yeah, likewise. And yes, I will certainly redirect the stream accordingly if if you start to suffer from any concussion.
No, I should be fine. No. Yeah, I was laughing with my wife because, as I was there, they're asking me my birth date and phone numbers, all this stuff, and I was giving it all to them, but not once did they ever take my driver's license or anything to confirm what this concussed man was coming in and saying to them. And so I just thought that was kind of funny.
Well, I'm glad you're okay.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Anyways, I want to dive into it. First, starting off with some big news that dropped, I believe, last week with the 4-star edge, Jake Krell. And correct me if I'm saying his last name improperly, because I told my people, I said, all right, awesome. I told my people that I would ask you because I know you're the professional at pronunciations. But he announced that he's going to, he's out of Orlando, Florida, IMG Academy. He's going to be making his commitment on August 12th. Where do you feel the Sooners stand in getting that commitment from Jake Krell?
Yeah, so it's interesting. It's really interesting, Josh, because as recently as last weekend, Jake Krell was telling everybody, reporters, fellow recruits, teammates, etc., that he was eyeing a commitment in October, was going to wait till Oklahoma, Ole Miss, and Texas, his final 3, had the opportunity to play some games, put a product out there on the field. And it makes a lot of sense when your top school or one of your top schools is Oklahoma, because the Sooners have got to win in 2025. I mean, we've discussed that from a zillion different angles this offseason. Josh. I mean, it's a pivotal year for Oklahoma football in which they absolutely have to win games, or it's going to be an offseason of sweeping change. Now, all of a sudden, less than 72 hours after saying on the record with John Garcia of Rivals, yeah, I'm planning on committing sometime in October around my birthday, October 9th, he announces, nope, August 12th on ESPN's College Football Live. That's when the decision is going down. So in my mind, that timeline shift doesn't bode particularly well for Oklahoma, because you ask pretty much anybody in the industry, Oklahoma is Jake Krell's top school. They have been his top school for a long, long time. So that is the status quo in the recruitment. Oklahoma, number one, everybody else chasing. When everything shifts that drastically, particularly with regard to the timeline, that would lead you to believe that the status quo has shifted. And so, understandably, there's been a lot of mounting confidence over the last couple of days from the Texas camp about where they stand with Jake Krell and the Longhorn trend that is seemingly surging in his recruitment. Now, as of right now, as we sit here tonight, Thursday, August 7th, I don't know for a fact where Jake Krell is going to commit next Tuesday. I feel quite confident that it's going to be OU or Texas. I do not believe it's going to be Ole Miss. But based on the sum of the intel from sources close to that situation that I've talked to, still feels like Oklahoma's holding on to the lead, and Texas is giving the kid a lot to think about. And so if you're the Sooners and you know at this point, okay, he's committing on August 12th, we no longer have to play winning football in order to convince him that this is where he needs to be, you're just really reverting back to the same pitch that you've made to the kid for the past 2+ years, right? Which is, we believed in you early. They offered him all the way back in July of 2023 before his sophomore year of high school. We believed in you. We've all invested in you relationally. You fit here. You can be the next R. Mason Thomas within this scheme. Everything that you are as a person and as a player is a hand-in-glove fit for the University of Oklahoma. And obviously, you're going to have to engage in financial conversations as well over these final days. But that's what Oklahoma is going to have to lean on here down the stretch to make sure that they hold off Texas in the race for Jake Krell.
Yeah, and to your point, it kind of feels the same as maybe some, and we'll kind of get into that a little bit more as well. It feels the same as some recent commitments that happened pretty early and before the season started, where, you know, because of what Oklahoma had in terms of production last season, that kind of makes you, like you said, kind of makes you lean towards the I'm not really sure, because obviously you would think that if he's making that commitment before the season starts and before we see what Oklahoma is able to produce this season, that maybe it's going with the team that has wins on their record most recently, rather than, of course, Oklahoma.
Yeah, man, it's an interesting predicament that Oklahoma faces here with both Krell and Davian Gross heading into the fall, because both of those guys, and we don't know, there's no concrete commitment date on the schedule right now for Gross, but both of those guys are expected to commit before the season. And so really, like, here's what the conversation becomes. Even if you're able to get Jake Krell committed and or Davian Gross committed, well, everything that we have said all offseason about the 2025 football season is still very much applicable, Josh. Like, you have to be able to hang on to these guys. And the way you hang on to them is you got to go win football games. If you don't, they're not going to stay committed anyway. So in many ways, the commitment, whenever it comes from Gross, and certainly the commitment on August 12th from Krell, in many ways just doesn't mark the end of the line. Regardless of the outcome, it doesn't mark the end of the line. You're going to have to see this whole process through and see it through with every single one of your current commits in the 2026 cycle, all the way until signing day in December.
Yeah, and you know, I think when it gets closer to that time, and correct me if I'm wrong too, Jake Krell also has his game day visit against Michigan for Oklahoma currently, right?
Tentatively, that is on the schedule, yes.
Okay, yeah. So obviously that could change if things were to go the other way. But I guess, does that give Oklahoma any kind of hope for maybe flipping in the future if things go well with that, if the commitment were to be made the other way, or would that be taken completely off the schedule?
That's a great question. And I don't know if we'll know the answer until August 12th when we know concretely where Jake Krell is going. Now, obviously, if he does commit to Texas on the 12th, and then he's in Norman September 6th for the Michigan game anyway, then it's really as if nothing ever happened, right? Yeah. Then you don't even regard him necessarily as committed if you're an Oklahoma fan, because if he's still showing up to Norman, that demonstrates he still has a very high level of interest in your program. And at that point, he's just continuing to evaluate what you're able to do on the gridiron throughout the season. So I think even if he commits to Texas, as long as he is in town on September 6th, regardless of who he's committed to at the time, like that's what you want to see if you're an Oklahoma fan. You want Jake Krell in the building for that primetime showdown with the Wolverines.
Yeah, well said. We're talking a little bit about, flip season. Of course, that's during the season when Oklahoma's actually able to show, see, look, this is what we have to offer. Look at what we've produced out on the field. And that comes in many shapes and forms. But when it comes to flip season, I think from the fans' perspective in many ways, if you pay attention to social media, you see this. If you pay attention to your live chats and stuff on YouTube, your comments on YouTube, and as well as I can see on ours as well, it doesn't feel to the fan base that the 2026 cycle has gone their way. Of course, I would say, and I'm sure you would agree, that's a little too early. Pump the brakes, because there is such a thing as flip season, and Oklahoma's done pretty well in that part of the commitment stage. Specifically at wide receiver, I feel like Oklahoma fans did not feel like it went that way. Of course, with Gross, if he ever decides to make that commitment and come out, it seems like we've been waiting for the last month and a half or so for that. And then, of course, I feel like tight end was maybe another group where they felt that way until, of course, Tyler Ruxer committed. But with the commits that Oklahoma may have, quote unquote, missed, do you feel like there are any that Oklahoma feels like they have a good chance, or maybe some that you feel OU would go after for that flipped commitment?
I think a ton depends not only on what Oklahoma does this fall, but on what several other programs do or don't do. Because, for instance, you look at a guy like Jordan Clay, the 4-star wide receiver out of San Antonio, who chose Baylor over Oklahoma in early July. Baylor's first 4 games of the 2025 season feature showdowns with Auburn, Arizona State, and SMU. There's a very real world in which Baylor is 1-3 after 4 games. And if that is the case, there will be trouble brewing in Waco. And all of the job security questions that seem to follow Dave Aranda for several years up until he was able to kind of stabilize things in 2024 and get that team on a roll down the stretch, they're going to crop up again. And that's likely going to sow seeds of doubt in the collective mind of Baylor's recruiting class as to whether they can and should hold together with the knowledge that Aranda might no longer be employed at the conclusion of the 25 season. And so if you're able to pair early season struggles from a program like Baylor with a strong early kick from Oklahoma, and, we look at that schedule over the first 5 games, it's not that difficult, Josh. Yeah, you play Michigan, you play Auburn. Both of those are home games. And then the other 3 tilts for OU: at home against Illinois State, on the road at Temple, at home against Kent State. 3 easy wins there. And so if those 2 things happen in conjunction, then you're looking at a very real flip possibility from a guy like Jordan Clay. What could happen, let's say, if Kentucky starts slowly? Kentucky beat out Oklahoma for 4-star wideout Dallas Dickerson back in June. If Oklahoma's 4-0 and Kentucky is 1-3, and I'd say that offhand, I don't know what their schedule looks like in September. I should research that before I tout that possibility. But you get the picture. Like, let's say Kentucky's scuffling and Oklahoma starts hot. Is there flip potential there? So there are several guys in this class that the Sooners are going to monitor. As to whether they really start pressing for a flip, I think it's going to be a case-by-case basis. And it's going to be a judgment that the OU staff and front office makes based upon how their own team is performing on the field versus how the program to which XYZ recruit is committed is performing on the field.
Yeah, and I would agree with that quite well. I think when it comes to flip season, like you said, it's not just about what your current team that is trying to pull that commitment, although I think that's probably the most important and the only one that you can control. Like you said, too, very, very well to pay attention to those that they've also committed to. Want to remind everybody who's watching over on X, we will be dropping the X live stream now, so you can join us over on YouTube. So jump over there real quick if you would like to join us and watch the remainder of the show. Again, just search Oklahoma VOCFB, and you should be able to find us just fine. But for now, we will see you guys all next time. All right. I think X has been removed from the stream. So, Parker, we can keep on going on. First, I think one of the biggest question marks, one of the biggest concerns from 2024 and leading into this season was that offensive line. Of course, it was atrocious last season, but we can also kind of attribute that to a lot of injuries and a lot of young guys that didn't have a whole lot of experience that probably shouldn't have been thrown out there so early. Going into 2025, first, how does the cohesion and also the competitiveness look with that offensive line? Maybe even comparative to last season, because I think that's a good, maybe not, but I feel like that's a good comparing point. And then also, are there any shakeups that you think could surprise fans coming into fall?
Well, I don't know how much of a surprise this would qualify as, Josh, because I think there are plenty that have come to understand this dude was going to be undeniable at a certain point. But Eddie Pierre-Louis has been running ahead of Heath Ozida, getting first-team reps at left guard. Ozida made several starts there for Oklahoma a season ago. Pierre-Louis is a true freshman, only saw action in 4 games. But this is a guy that offhand, was he Oklahoma's highest rated offensive commit in the 2024 class? He may very well have been. He was the number 33 overall player in that cycle, according to Rivals, number 1 interior offensive lineman in the country, just an absolute freakazoid of an athlete. And so you figured at a certain point, Eddie Pierre-Louis' time was going to come. It was just a case, just a matter of, okay, at whose expense is it going to come by? And so I think with Pierre-Louis looking like the early favorite, to start at left guard, I'll be monitoring that closely over the next several weeks of camp. Can he hold on to that spot? Does Ozida have a counter punch, if you will, in that battle? And then the right tackle situation is the other kind of unresolved variable in the equation, because Derek Simmons, for most of the offseason, has been the projected starter at that position. He's been in concussion protocol this week. Jake Taylor, his primary backup, the redshirt junior out of Las Vegas, he's been sidelined as well. And so as of right now, the guy that's getting first-team reps at right tackle is Stanford transfer Luke Baklenko. And so it's him opposite Jacob Sexton. You'd like, obviously, and you'd expect that when the season begins, you have Sexton and Simmons as your bookends. Everything else feels reasonably clearly defined. I still think a battle is brewing at center between Troy Everett and Jake Michaela. Everett's gotten the majority of the first-team reps there, but the Sooners paid a pretty penny to bring in Michaela. And I don't believe they brought him in with the express purpose of making him a backup. That's not to say that they're going to force the issue and play him at center over Everett, even if Everett is better. But there are high expectations in that building for Jake Michaela and what he's going to bring to the table for Oklahoma immediately in 2025. So you look back to last year, there was never really an opportunity for that offensive line to establish any sense of cohesion because it was a constant revolving door at multiple positions. I think once Simmons clears concussion protocol and he's back there in the mix for Oklahoma, at that point, assuming no further injuries, you would very much expect that this offensive line really starts to gel as a unit. And that's already happening. And Ben Arbuckle and Brent Venables discussed that in their press conferences last week. But we should see, at minimum, an above average offensive line for Oklahoma this year, assuming they can keep, for the most part, the same 5 guys in the lineup week in, week out. It's very difficult to play. And it was John Mateer that just days ago mentioned, look, it's difficult to get 5 guys doing the exact same thing, and they have to play in concert in order to be effective. Offensive line play is a difficult thing to coach. It's a difficult thing to manage. It's a difficult thing to execute. And so you have to have continuity there to a certain extent. Otherwise, you're just kind of lost at sea. And so Oklahoma fans will no doubt be keeping their fingers crossed that this unit is able to stay healthy, because that is going to be the biggest sign that there are brighter days ahead for Bill Bedenbaugh's group.
Yeah, yeah, and I've mentioned this in the past too when talking about how important, like you said, that cohesion, that kind of just understanding and the connection that you've got with the offensive line. I think that's the one group that it probably means the most to have that chemistry with one another. Just because if you take one singular group, I think the wide receiver group might be the closest one. Obviously, if you go to the defensive side of the ball, then I suppose when you're covering pass coverage. Then you also want to have that understanding. But for the most part, every other position group really just has to know what their job is, where the offensive line really has to know what the guy next to him is going to go on to next, and know what his responsibility is compared to what my responsibility is. And so, yeah, I think that's a really big piece. And I know you and Brandon have both reported some on this, but how do you feel with the aggression that you've seen from that offensive line, especially, like I said, comparing to last season? Not that it's really a good comparing point, I suppose, because you didn't see much of it at all last season. But does it feel like it's going in the right direction compared to what, of course, that banged up and not so good offensive line felt like last season?
Bill Bedenbaugh is certainly trying to instill a greater sense of aggression in them, and we've seen that on the practice field. Some of the drills they're running through, it's something he's really, really emphasizing is aggression, and understandably so. And I will say, the other thing that encourages me about where this offensive line can go in 2025 is there are some huge bodies in that offensive line room. I mean, guys, Jacob Sexton is a perfect example. Jacob Sexton's a guy that for the last couple of years has been playing right around 310, I do believe. He's 330 right now, and it looks great on him. It doesn't look like a fat 330. Every single scholarship offensive lineman on Oklahoma's roster is north of 300 pounds, with the exception of Jake Michaela, who's at 299, and they look lean. They look like they look muscled up. They look bulky, but they also look lean. There's not a lot of bad weight that any of them are carrying. We've seen Fabechi Wiwu reshape his body a little bit. I believe he was the heaviest player on Oklahoma's roster last year, and he's trimmed down to a svelte 325 or so. And so with the way that this offensive line looks in terms of what they are as physical specimens, in addition to Bedenbaugh trying to unlock and instill some of that additional aggression in their game, and just the prospect of significantly improved continuity as opposed to a year ago, I like the potential that this unit brings to the table in 2025. We'll have to see it on the field. The jury is still out until, I would say, probably the Auburn game, because Auburn does have some really solid talent up front. Michigan does as well. But after the first 4 games, I think we'll get a clearer idea of how good this unit actually is. But there's a lot of promise there, and I'm encouraged by what I've seen so far.
Yeah, that's definitely stuff that the Oklahoma fans love to hear, and especially when talking about that group, again, with probably the most concern around it, because, again, without the trenches, you really can't win football games, especially in the Southeastern Conference. When going on and looking around the Oklahoma Sooners roster and thinking of different position groups, like I said, the offensive line is probably the biggest. I think wide receiver core would be the next down as far as biggest concerns. What position groups give you the biggest concerns going into 2025 based on what you've seen in practices?
You know, before fall camp, I would have said and did say that it's cornerback for me, with the knowledge that Eli Bowen was going to miss a good chunk of fall camp. And obviously, Gentry Williams only played 2 games last season before he had to shut it down for the remainder of the campaign. And so I was worried about the depth at cornerback. I am substantially less worried now, because Cortland Guillory has picked up right where he left off in the spring. And I truly do believe, Josh, and this is maybe the hottest take you'll hear from me all day, but I truly do believe that if Eli Bowen does not play on August 30th at Illinois State, and there is an argument to be made, I mean, why play that guy against Illinois State anyway? But if he is not active August 30th against Illinois State, I think right now the guy that starts opposite Gentry Williams at that other cornerback position is Cortland Guillory. And so he's come on very strong, even as a true freshman, left such a remarkable impression upon pretty much everybody, coaches, teammates, peers, staffers that have witnessed the way that he's attacked everything on the practice field and in the film room as well. And so I think the ceiling is darn near limitless for that guy, I should say. And I mentioned this on the Under the Visor podcast, but I had one source remark to me the other day. I don't think Cortland Guillory is going to be at the University of Oklahoma for longer than 3 years. That's how good he is. And so between him and Davon Jordan and Jeremiah Newcomb, the redshirt freshman, Jacoby Johnson, obviously still very prominently in the mix, the rising junior, I feel better about Oklahoma's cornerback depth than I did going into fall camp, due in no small part to Guillory's emergence. Not that concerned about wide receiver. I think what has become more of a concern throughout this week is running back. There were only 2 running backs that were active at yesterday's practice, and Javonte Barnes and Torrey Blaylock. Taylor Tatum, Xavier Robinson, Jaden Ott, all dealing with minor injuries right now. Andy Bass still obviously coming off ACL surgery. So the I would say that, and I hate to even call it lack of depth, because they do have good depth in the running back room, but the lack of availability, I suppose, in that running back room would seem to be a preeminent concern at the moment. That said, none of those guys are facing anything, with the exception of Bass, that should prevent them from being ready to rock by the time August 30th rolls around. So I'll be honest, not a ton of concerns for this team from a personnel standpoint.
Yeah, and that's good to hear from you, because I was leaning the same way as you. I felt like the corner room was just the one that, again, still from my standpoint, because I'm not there in practices with you to see everything that you're seeing, but although I do trust what you and several others have mentioned, about Cortland Guillory, and you've even heard coaches come out and express how much they've been impressed with him, even with summer workouts, and how much he's been able to show his commitment. So that definitely puts some ease to the room that I've definitely said has the most concern, especially when you talk about the defense, because there isn't a whole lot over there on the defense that you'd be concerned about. And so definitely good to hear that. When you go down the list of players, I think there's a lot, and you've already mentioned some names. There's a lot of players that have an opportunity before them that they could see more playing time. And I think this happens just about every season. Last season, you saw it mid-season with Xavier Robinson being able to get out there, kind of an under the radar player who went out there and earned a spot and earned some playing time. Are there any players right now during fall camp that you think could be that under the radar player that goes out there and maybe not stealing a starter's position, but going out there and getting significant playing time come fall?
I think the beauty of this, Josh, is that, and this is, it comes with the territory. With a platform comes a degree of power. The more that people like me talk about somebody like Cortland Guillory, for example, the less under the radar that player feels. I could have cited Cortland Guillory a week ago as an under the radar player that I think is going to rise. But at this point, is he really still under the radar? So if we're looking for guys that are still flying under the radar a little bit at this point, as fall camp has gotten underway, the first guy that springs to mind for me, and again, I'm even like internally as I say this, wrestling with, is he truly under the radar? But Elijah Thomas is somebody that I don't know if he will get a ton of immediate action when the season starts, just because of how many talented upperclassmen wide receivers there are going to be in the mix for Oklahoma. But Elijah Thomas is the type of guy that, to me, whenever he starts getting opportunities, no matter how sporadic they may be, he's someone that is more than capable of seizing those opportunities and turning them into even more opportunities. So I've long likened Elijah Thomas's potential output in the 2025 campaign, or I guess potential trajectory as a true freshman, to that of Marvin Mims back in 2020, because Marvin Mims didn't necessarily break camp as a guy that was expected to be heavily in the rotation, but his very first collegiate catch was a 58-yard touchdown against Missouri State. He saw pretty minimal snaps in that game, but you make a play like that, obviously you're going to see the field the next week, and he did, and made a couple more plays, and then a couple more the next week, and then by midseason, he was Oklahoma's go-to guy at wide receiver. Now, am I expecting a meteoric rise like that from Elijah Thomas? No, but I certainly think he's the type of guy that can continue to play himself into a gradually increased role as the season goes along. And another guy that I think no longer qualifies as under the radar, but that kind of belongs in that same category in my mind would be Taylor Wine, the redshirt sophomore defensive end.
Yeah. Those are a couple of names, like you said. So I would still agree with you. I still think I would call both of them under the radar. Elijah Thomas has definitely gotten a lot more attention here as of recent, mainly because maybe guys like yourself reporting on what you're seeing there in practice. Yeah, I think Elijah Thomas is definitely one that I've kind of mentioned just because I felt like with the transfers, specifically in the wide receiver room, it felt like you had Giovanni Gibson got most of the attention, Isaiah Satania got some attention, where Keontez Lewis to me feels like the more that I've watched his tape, that to me feels like a guy that still I haven't heard a whole lot about. Maybe you can speak to that. That just to me feels like an under the radar guy that who knows, maybe comes out there and has some big plays. Therefore, he gets some more playing time in a single game and ends up having that one breakout game, kind of maybe like what we saw with Hollywood Brown, maybe not to that extent where he ends up taking a starting position, but coming out there and getting much more playing time because of a breakout game. Is that kind of what you feel maybe with a guy like Keontez Lewis?
Yeah, no doubt. And I think he's going to be in the rotation, towards the top of the rotation, a wide receiver, when camp breaks and the Sooners start the 2025 season. Like he's left a very strong impression thus far in the fall. And I can remember hearing from a source with authoritative knowledge on the matter back in the spring, reached out to me proactively, said, "Hey, look, Keontez Lewis," and at the time he was dealing with an injury. His availability was off and on throughout spring. But they said, look, Keontez Lewis, you don't really see it right now because he's dealing with an injury. When fall rolls around and he's healthy, everybody's going to see just how good that guy can be. He's a different type of dude than Giovanni Gibson as a receiver, has his own flavor that he brings to the table, if you will. But he's incredibly gifted. He's incredibly seasoned. He's incredibly polished. This is his 5th year of college football, and he's going to produce for this football team. And so far, everything that we've seen and heard from Keontez Lewis over the first week of fall camp lines up with that prognostication. So I'm excited to see what it looks like. He's a big wide receiver. He plays physical. He's a good route runner. And I think there's going to be a little bit of added motivation for a guy like that with everything he's been through, bouncing from UCLA to Wisconsin to Southern Illinois at the FCS level. Now, this is his last ride. It's his last year of college football. He gets the opportunity to make it count at the University of Oklahoma and give himself the chance to play in the NFL. So what Keontez Lewis does with that opportunity, it's going to be very intriguing to see.
Yeah, very, very interesting, and I'm glad to hear you kind of back me up on that because I don't know if I've really read or heard anyone really talking about him the way that I just again that's really just from me seeing some of his highlights. Whenever I really dove into him as a player, I was like, man, why is he not being talked about more? And of course, I think like you mentioned, him being out of most of spring is the biggest reason for that. I guess one more thing from me, and then I do have a couple from the chat that I'd love for you to be able to answer as well.
Yeah.
Do you have, and I know, in your position, I can understand if you don't want to throw this out there, do you have a win-loss prediction for the Oklahoma Sooners come 2025?
I've long said I think they're an 8-9 win team. It's hard to put an exact number on it just because I'll say this, and maybe this is half of a prediction, but this is a prediction I'm comfortable making. I think Oklahoma goes into the Texas game 5-0. I think they head into the Red River Showdown in Dallas undefeated. Thereafter, I have no idea what happens the rest of the way because obviously so much for this team from a mentality and motivation standpoint every single year hinges on the outcome of that game. And then the second half of the schedule is just brutal. Now, we have no idea how some of those teams, South Carolina, Missouri, Ole Miss, LSU, etc., are actually going to look on the field relative to what preseason expectations are. We have no idea how they're going to look practically rather than just on paper. But I do feel confident that Oklahoma starts 5-0. What happens after that is anybody's guess. It's the SEC. It's a tough league. It's a league where anybody can beat anybody on any given weekend. And so, look, end of the day, if you start 5-0, give yourself a really, really good chance to sneak into that college football playoff field in the back end, because I think 9-3 with this schedule does it, Josh. And
Yeah.
so you start 5-0, all you got to do is go 4-3 the rest of the way. One game over 500. That's all it takes. So that's my expectation, is that Oklahoma is right around that 8-9 win mark. And I do think they're going to be in the hunt for a playoff berth.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, the back end of that schedule is very questionable. I think going down that list, I think even Texas has a lot of question marks. I believe Steve Sarkisian is a better coach than what some Oklahoma fans are willing to give him credit for. So I believe that they'll still be a top tier, top caliber team, and you'll see that week 1 when they go to Ohio State and play in the shoe. And then I think Alabama has some question marks, but I personally think that they'll be better. With what they've got coming in. Tennessee, obviously, lots of questions there with Nico Iamaleava transferring out over to UCLA. Like you mentioned, Mizzou, I feel like Mizzou has to be better than what they were playing with the backup quarterback last season, but still Oklahoma also matches that in the improvements. And then, of course, Ole Miss, similar question marks there. And even LSU, a lot of question marks there. Is Bauer Sharp going to throw an interception to Oklahoma the way that he did to LSU last season? We don't know. Those are all question marks up in the air. So it's I like that. I think I got ridiculed a lot for predicting 8-4, but that was me just trying to be realistic, realizing that you have to expect things to go as planned for a lot of things that we just haven't seen out there on the field just yet. But kind of going through some of the chats that I saw that I'm sure they would love to hear from you. Are the Gibsons close to coming back? Do you have any new info on Giovanni and Jaden Gibson? And then also, I guess one more thing. Do you know, are they going to have JAY and JAV on the back of their jerseys?
That is a phenomenal question that I do not know the answer to, but I'm really interested to see how they manage that. Giovanni Gibson, my expectation for the last month or so has been, okay, pretty solid shot. He's back by the Michigan game. I don't really see any reason to play him against Illinois State, even if he's ready. Just let him take some practice reps, ramp up slowly. Don't need to throw him out there on a Saturday until Michigan rolls around. And even if he doesn't play against Michigan, honestly, I think Oklahoma is more than capable of winning that football game without him, especially with the way the rest of that receiver group looks now. So I would say, if you are trying to gauge the reasonable timeline for a return for Giovanni Gibson, I think it's perfectly plausible that he's back by the Michigan game. In my mind, as long as he's back by the Auburn game, I think that's fine. And I think that's close to best case scenario for Oklahoma, because that's just a guy that you want healthy for SEC play. Anything that happens before that, any availability that he has before that is gravy. So that's kind of what I'm looking at with Giovanni. The intel is kind of all over the place with Jaden Gibson and the timetable for his return, which you would kind of expect, because he has not been up to full speed in almost a year. I think it was August 15th or 16th last year that he suffered the torn patellar tendon on the practice field that cost him the entire 2024 season. And then he suffered a re-injury. It wasn't the same injury, but he re-injured that same knee as he was working back in April, I do believe, March or April. And so with as much time as he has spent out of pads and doing rehab work as opposed to full speed football activities, when you combine that with the obvious observation that he has not been active for the first week of fall camp outside of throwing the jersey on and doing a little bit of jogging and warming up, I don't know what to expect. I couldn't tell you what to expect as to when Jaden Gibson is coming back. I would say if he is not on track to return on or around the week of the Auburn game, I think you have to start to consider the possibility that he may just be on track for another medical waiver in 2025. And you hope that's not what it comes to, and it shouldn't come to that. But in order for Jaden Gibson to get back on the field and play meaningful and impactful football for Oklahoma in 2025, he's going to have to be 100% of himself, with the way that the rest of this receiver room is shaping up. And so I don't imagine Oklahoma will get him back to playing on Saturdays until he is, no question about it, 100%. And I just don't know when that's going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said too with Jaden, it's just that it's been so long, and it's also such a severe injury that he came off of last season that you've got to kind of work through and try to predict. And obviously, they're not going to tell you a whole lot on the injury front. They will tell you as much as they can confidently tell you, but really nobody knows until they see that progress, come to fruition. But another question that I thought was a pretty good one there that you might be able to answer as well. Are there any updates on Caden Helms' return to full practice or possibly game this season?
Yeah, so Caden Helms was practicing in full for Oklahoma for the first few days of fall camp before he suffered that broken hand, which we've talked about at OU Insider. He was out there on the practice field doing rehab work in a soft cast. He had pads on yesterday. And so from everything I understand, he avoided substantial recovery time. When you're dealing with the hand, Josh, you have so many little bones in the hand. And so a broken hand can mean a variety of different things. And depending on which bone you fracture, it could be weeks, it could be months. And as I understand it, Caden Helms got pretty lucky. He broke one of the bones that does not require a ton of time to rehab and get right. And so I expect Caden Helms to be active for week one. He may still be in a cast or a club or something like that, but I am not under the impression that Caden Helms is going to miss any game time due to this broken hand. He will miss some practice time. I would say a week or two, but I think he's going to be ready to roll by the time the Illinois State game rolls around.
Yeah, that's definitely some good. I think that's a good timeline for him as well. One more that I thought was good. I know Jeff Spangler had a question earlier, but again, another good one here. Boganowski at Cheetah, and I will even mention, if not him, I know that you have somebody else that was also practicing over there in that Cheetah position.
Yeah, so Jeremiah Newcomb started practicing at Cheetah in the last couple of days. So that's something to keep an eye on. But no, you're not going to see Boganowski at Cheetah. He's a free safety. And Oklahoma is going to keep him at free safety. He is the heir apparent to Robert Spears-Jennings at that position. The guy that you will see at Cheetah, the guy that may start at Cheetah, depending on Kendall Dolby's availability, is Reggie Powers. Reggie Powers, to this point, has had a strong enough offseason and is just a good enough all-around football player that I think if he doesn't start over Daniels at Cheetah, there is an equally realistic possibility that he starts over Peyton Bowen at strong safety. And so regardless of whether he earns the starter's designation or not, you're going to see Reggie Powers on the field a lot this fall. He and Boganowski and Jaden Hardy, that's the future for Oklahoma at safety. No question about it.
Yeah, that's some really exciting things to hear. Definitely with Reggie too. I mean, being a young guy, being able to get out there and get some meaningful playing time, playing full meaningful reps. Definitely something to look forward to. But Parker, I already took more of your time than I ever anticipated, so I appreciate you so much for coming on. But real quick, I know I do it plenty on the show, but give everybody a quick rundown of where they can find your work.
OUinsider.com, folks, associated with the On3 network right now, which has been a great move. We're enjoying it. You get your first week of subscription, of membership, for just $1 over there. So try it out for a week. It'll cost you $1. If you don't like it, you don't have to stick around, but we think you will. We're providing insane amounts of content, especially this time of year, to Sooner fans all across the globe. So wherever you live, whatever your particular interest is, be it football, recruiting, softball, basketball, baseball, whatever, we've got it all covered for you over there. And that's our commitment that we make to you year round. We are doing the most, more than anybody else in the market, to provide you all with the coverage that you need of your Sooners.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can vouch for you. I think it's definitely the best. I mean, from anything that I've been able to experience. That's why, of course, I've been able to work up a relationship with you and Brandon some too. So, of course, I appreciate you coming on. And of course, with my head not thinking properly today, for very reasonable, for very good reasons, I guess I should say. I will make sure that there is a link down in the description and below as well, so you guys can go check out Parker Thune and everything that he does over at OU Insider. But Parker, I'll let you go. I appreciate you again for jumping on.
Of course, Josh. Appreciate you. Take it easy.
Yep. All right. And for everybody who is still watching over here on YouTube, I will be getting to the live chat. And also, that call in line is open. And of course, again, for my head issues, forgot to read the call in number and to post that to the chat. I think it's down in the description below, but that might have also been something that I forgot to do before getting everything rolling today. So make sure to call in. That is 405-353-4535. And call in. I will explain it to everybody who is new to the call-in system, or I know last week there was some confusion with it. Totally understandable. So you call into that number, and what will happen is you will be put into our queue. First, it'll ask you to say your name and where you are from. So say you are Jim from Miami, Florida. Really quick, very clear, so that the computer can pick that up. What that does is it tells me who's calling. That way I know who to introduce, and it makes it a lot easier, a lot simpler for everybody, a lot less confusing for everybody as we're going through those calls. So call into 405-353-4535. Say your name and where you are from whenever it asks you to after that prompt. And then it will, I believe, beep at you to jump on the line. And when you are on the line, you will be able to hear me, but I will not be able to hear you. I will be able to see you in my queue over on my my iPad over here to take calls. And then when I can see you, I will then add you to the stream with me, and you will hear a loud beep. Apologies if that hurts your ear. I know I was told that is a very loud beeping tone. I can't control the volume of that, but once you hear that loud beep, as long as you said your name and where you are from clearly, then I will be able to see that on the screen, and I will say your name and introduce you in to the call in. But please call in so I can hear from you guys. Would love to chat with you guys. But for now, I will jump over to the live chat. Hopefully you guys got what you wanted out of Parker Thune. I love the time that I get to spend with Parker. A great guy too. Anyways, Jimmy Satterfield in the chat. What's up, Jimmy? He says, how are the players still getting concussions when they're wearing Guardian caps on their helmets? Well, I can tell you this. Okay, so from a guy that has had several concussions and currently going through one now even, the Guardian caps help. It's like the newer style helmets that they constantly come out with. They keep on improving them, but a concussion can happen even without any kind of collision. A concussion can happen from you shaking your head too violently, and you know, really all that it is. If you watch the movie Concussion with Will Smith, you'll kind of understand concussions even a little bit more just from that alone. But it's just simply from your brain is inside your head and has room to move, and any kind of movement really can cause that. I get what you're saying. I think it's probably more satirical where you're coming from, but yeah, I mean, I do agree with you. If we've got these stupid Guardian caps, why aren't they working? But obviously they are there to aid. They do take some extra cushion because you don't have a whole lot of cushion in between your brain and your skull. You've got a little bit of fluid, but that doesn't really stop it from sliding around. So, I mean, concussions are going to happen. It's the game of football. And don't be too concerned with the injuries happening now. I know, and I just mentioned this this past Tuesday, when we were talking about some of the injuries. Don't let them concern you too much right now during fall camp. A lot of it, most of it, is going to be guys sitting out, not necessarily because they have to, but because they're taking extra precaution. And also in fall camp, they took somewhat of a break between spring camp and fall camp. Spring camp, you really didn't see as many big time injuries, which is a good sign. That's where it would concern you the most. But then coming into fall camp, you're going to hear a lot of injuries reported. They are going to take extra precaution. And like Parker mentioned a moment ago, there are several that we mentioned that are just minor injuries that we're hopeful for. And of course, we don't really know exactly how minor those might be. But don't be too concerned with the injuries, and especially with concussions. Concussions can be a bad thing that will carry on. But for the most part, those are things that will go away maybe in a week or two. They just have to be extra careful there, because then you're messing with your brain. And that's definitely concerning for a concussion. But I can say, from someone who's suffered a lot from my days in playing football, and I was a wrestler at a pretty good level too. And so, getting a lot of concussions, you can recover from them. You just got to take it easy, be careful, and work your way back. Robert says Miguel should have flown down to Orlando today to close the deal with Jake Krell. Yes, absolutely, he should have, and I'm sure they've made their calls. I'm sure they've sent plenty of texts. But yeah, hopefully, they pushed a little bit extra, and of course, as they get into the closing days, there's probably even going to be money being discussed as he gets closer, as I believe Parker mentioned that earlier as well. So, yeah, hopefully many hard pushes are made. Jake Krell, I believe ESPN has him as a 5-star. He's 5-star worthy, in my opinion. That was something else that I meant to have Parker explain to us, but we were talking about so much, and he gave us so much intel as it was. Had to get him off and send him on his way, so he could spend some time, some meaningful time with his lovely bride. Yeah, the star system, take it for what it's worth. He is a 4-star in most, even up to a 5-star. He's a great talent. So absolutely have to make the big pushes on him. Based God 333 says, since he reposted Diabella tweet a few days ago, I feel it's Texas now. Unfortunately, apologies. Having a hard time reading today for some weird reason. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. And I see Sauce Hoss Josh. That's a little hard to say if you say it real fast. He says, kind of responding to Base God 333 says, all signs point to that. Yes, it's recruiting. So we'll see. As Oklahoma fans with a short memory span and thinking of just what's happened recently, I understand and I also sympathize and empathize both with the concerns about this recruitment process, because this has literally happened to Oklahoma recently, where and the same thing with Davian Gross, who we also mentioned. With the more that these things get drawn out, and specifically with Jake Krell, the fact that it's not being drawn out, the fact that it changed to such a quick timeline is very concerning, because we know that he was favored to go to Oklahoma, but now it is kind of up in the air, because he's making that commitment before Oklahoma can prove to him what Oklahoma's identity truly is currently under this current regime. So that is concerning, and I think the biggest thing that was concerning about him, about getting his commitment into this regime, is just looking at the record that Brent Venables and this current staff has right now. It's not a good one to put out there to any kind of recruit, and especially when you're trying to pitch at a 4-star recruit. So yes, it's concerning. It does feel that the tides are shifting, but I will say that a lot of that is going to it's going to feel that way as an Oklahoma fan, because that short-term memory and remembering what's happened here recently. I'll go back to Sauce Hoss Josh real quick, because he's got a good note here that I've been also on the same note really this entire time. I feel like the more you listen to national media, he says the national media is continuing to build steam on Oklahoma probably being a good team, which, I think that in of itself kind of is reassuring to hear as an Oklahoma fan right now, because why would the national media be talking about Oklahoma this way? Why would they? Because the national media that we're talking about with Josh Pate, also go check out Teddy and Gabe's podcast with Josh Pate. I thought that was a very good discussion. I listened to that one in the truck today or yesterday, and loved it. Loved that discussion a lot. And Josh Pate's one of them, though. Very high on the Oklahoma Sooners. Even Tim Brando, another name that I respect very much. He was on Crane and Company with my guys Jake Crane and David Cohn, and also Blaine Crane over there. And he was on there talking to them about Oklahoma and how he feels Oklahoma even makes the playoffs. And so he puts them into the top 12, coming in there barely at number 12, I believe is where he put them. But yeah, it's great to hear that, because they have no reason to really they have no really any ties to the program the way that maybe I would, or my buddy Jay. I tease him all the time for being one of the biggest sunshine pumpers, but Jay Smith, and also John over there with him with Locked On, and and I think for guys like that are close to the program and fans of the program, and myself included, that we might predict Oklahoma to do well this season, because we also have that bias. where these guys have an open bias that they're not Oklahoma fans. They're not really tied to the program in any way. And so, I think when you look at that, then then it causes you to wonder and get a little bit excited. Now, what I do get concerned about is that you start to hear all of that. You start to hear about how much the national media loves Oklahoma and how the national media thinks that Oklahoma is going to do so well. And then you start to get a little too hyped. This is what's happening to me here recently as we get closer to the season. We are, let's see, this upcoming Saturday. So we are 2 days away and then 14 days from there. Am I right on that? So are we 16 days away from college football happening? And then that would be 21 days from Oklahoma right now. I think I've got that right, but again, I'm still going through my concussion protocol, so I might be wrong on the total days there. But I mean, as we get closer to time, built up because of what the national media is saying, and then we're let down when it doesn't happen. Let's say week 2 doesn't go Oklahoma's way, and then bam, just like that, you're faced with reality. So that's where I get concerned with hearing a bit about it, but I do like to hear it because I'm not the only one that's saying that, hey, I think Oklahoma could be really good. Everybody's saying it about Oklahoma. Everybody feels that the movements that they've made in this past offseason feel like the right direction. So I like to hear that from the national media because of the perspective that they have nothing to gain by pumping up Oklahoma. If anything, they get roasted even harder for picking a 6-7 team from a season ago to go to the playoffs, as Tim Brando mentioned, and Josh Pate even thinks 9-3 is a very possible and a reasonable expectation for Oklahoma. And with that 9-3, like Parker even mentioned a moment ago, that is a playoff contention record for this Oklahoma team because of their record. So yeah, a lot of national media building up that steam around Oklahoma and talking a lot about Oklahoma. I'm going to readjust my headset there, kind of sore there on the top of the head. Anyways, yeah, it's exciting. It's exciting to hear the national media talking this way because it kind of confirms what us as Oklahoma fans feel about Oklahoma going into this season. Jumping over to Sooner Cowboys, another resident on the show. What is up, Sooner Cowboys? He says, if OU wins a lot of games, hopefully we'll flip and land some recruits. Hopefully it is definitely the correct word to say. I will go take a step further because of the confidence that I have that if Oklahoma does well, that they definitely will land some flips. There will be some flips. I don't know if it's the ones that we mentioned a moment ago or the ones that we have talked about here on this show even, but I definitely think there will be some flips that happen. Now, if Jake Krell ends up going to and committing to Texas, even if he does come to Oklahoma in week 2 against Michigan, I don't know if I'd go as far to say that would be the type of flip that you get, but maybe one of these good wide receivers that you're hoping for. We could definitely hope and definitely strive for that. Again, reminder to everybody, that call-in line is open. Again, just call in, say your name and where you're from, and hold on the line until I introduce you into the show. You will hear a loud beep when I introduce you. And so don't panic. If you hear me and I can't hear you, don't panic. Stay on the line until I bring you in. That number is 405-353-4535. Call that number. Once I see you pop up in the queue, I'll add you to the show. We had many more people trying to call in last week, so I really anticipated that we might have some callers this week. But please call in, and I will try to get you added here very soon. Let's see here, kind of jumping down through and seeing if there's any other live chats to get to. Based God again, he says, I saw Cortland Guillory was a 3-star. That can't be true. But if that is true, that proves that it's more about coaches' evaluation than star rankings. Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? You know what I'll do right now, just because I'm curious. I don't remember, and that would have been something I wish I would have seen that whenever Parker was on with me, because I think that he would have had the answer right off the top of his head because he would have been working with the guys giving that recruit or giving that rating, I should say. Yeah, 3-star. At least according to On3/Rivals, he would have been a 3-star. That is a very good point to bring up. And then even looking at some other 3-stars on the roster that are currently doing very well, To your point, yes, you are right. That proves Jim Nagy's point that he's not going after 3 stars. Jim Nagy is not saying we're going to go after 3 stars because we can find some good ones and find some diamonds in the rough. He's not saying we're taking that Moneyball approach. That is not what he has said. And he's even reiterated himself even more. Again, my guy, Jay Smith, had a very good interview with him. Even Brandon Drum has also talked to Jim Nagy and explained, had him explain himself a little bit more, and then kind of back himself up and say, "Hey, listen, guys, like you guys are taking my words out of context. They are still going after 5-star guys, but when it comes down to, are we going to go crazy with spending NIL on a 5-star guy compared to trying to get a proven guy in a portal? That's where we try to use our own evaluation to tell whether we should be going after this 5-star guy and giving him all of this NIL money that he's demanding." That's really where all that's coming from. It's not that they're going to try to cut down on the 5 stars they're going after. If they feel that the 5-star fits their system, and he basically, what Jim Nagy is saying is, we will not look at our own evaluation first and have our own eyes and our own brains telling us what we think about a player, and when we feel that he makes the right connection, then we might explore out and see what others are saying about him, see if they agree with us, and take that into consideration. But ultimately, our own grading system is going to matter much more than anything we see on Rivals /On3, ESPN 247, any of that stuff. We're going to trust our own evaluations over anything. And they're going to create their own system even. He's got his own system that I believe he's already rolled out, that they will be able to kind of take a look at and be able to really dive in there. So, yeah. To your point, though, Base God, absolutely very good point to bring up there. Let's see here. Kind of going through. I like this one from Sauce Hoss Josh again. He says Marvin Mims is a wide receiver #1 on the depth chart at the moment for Denver. Yeah, I love to see that. And he has worked his tail off to earn that spot. And then even Jimmy says, yeah, he's doing great at Denver. Love to see it from him. Love to see that from any former Sooner. But yeah, absolutely. I see Sooner Cowboys kind of being that doom and gloom Sooner Cowboy again. But he says, here's to hoping flip season is going to be epic, and follows it up with, if not, OU is screwed. I don't know if I would go as far to say that they're screwed, although maybe to your point, maybe they will be screwed because that means that they weren't winning some games. That's a possibility. So I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just not jumping all on board with you. Let's see. OU OKC fan says, what's up, fam? What is up, man? I love to see you in the chat. Thanks so much for joining in here. Let's see here. Going through the chat real quick. Jeff Spangler. I know I've read your comments a couple of times today, but let's jump to another one. Says Arbuckle running reverse sweep to Canic on the first play of the year. Yes. I just talked with him the other day, and he told me that was the first play that they're throwing out there. So yeah, I mean, it's pretty crazy. And it's going to be a reverse sweep to Jaron Canic, where he's got a passing option. And what he's supposed to do is drop back as the pressure is coming after him, and just loft it up in the air and hope that the opposing team can intercept it. No, I'm teasing about all of this. I hope there's nothing too cute being happened with Jaron Canic the way that we saw. It just didn't fit the personnel last year when we saw some of the crazy stuff. And I don't know if that's what you're referring to, but that is what I was referring to. But yeah, absolutely. Over to Sooner Cowboys again. He says, opinion, though. I think Sark has learned a lot from his failure before Texas job, but still don't think he's a top 5 coach. I don't know if I would say he's a top 5 coach either. I don't think I've ever said that. But I do think he's better than what some Oklahoma fans are willing to give him credit for. And I don't like admitting that. I really don't. I personally don't. It's nothing against Sark as a person. It's the rivalry is the only reason why, but I don't care for Sark. Don't really have anything good to say about Sark outside of the fact that I will give credit where credit is due. I will give you your flowers when they are deserved. And so, yeah, you know what? I've got to give that to you. Let's see. Kyle is in the chat. What's up, Kyle? He says, no word on Gentry. Yes, there is word on Gentry. I know that's not something that we really mentioned much with Parker, but Gentry is, I don't know if I would say full speed. Maybe I can confirm that with Parker. Maybe I can shoot him a text real quick and ask to kind of uh, confirm that would be full speed, but he is practicing and a heavy dose of practice and a lot of good things coming from Gentry Williams. And so, yeah, I mean, I will definitely mention more about him as time goes on too. But he's one of those guys that is kind of flying under the radar right now, just because there's been so many other big news. You know, guys like Gentry Williams, Jeremiah Newcomb, and even in the running back room. There's been, of course, other injury concerns being reported on where those kind of hide all of the talk about guys like Gentry or even Javante Barnes, who is also having a very good camp. Who's another guy that's been having a good camp so far that might be flying under the radar? Sammy Omosigo, I think we mentioned him last week. I don't know if he would be under the radar. And Taylor Wine's another one that's maybe a little bit under the radar, but not really because he's been talked about a lot lately. I think that pretty much says it. But no, I'll try to find the guys that we would expect to be having good camps, or even guys like Gentry who we want to hear more about. That, hey, how are they doing? I'll also get some more follow-ups on Kendall Dolby as time goes on. Kendall Daniels has really been fitting in really well. The other KD, he's been fitting in really well too. That's something else that I've heard a lot of. So we'll try to follow up. There's just too much to get to with two shows during the week, so we'll try to get to as much as possible. But I do appreciate you putting that in the chat, so that way that could be touched on. Jimmy says, "What time is scrimmage on Saturday?" I do not know. I don't go to them in person yet, so I don't know. But if I find out, maybe I'll put that out there. I guess we won't be on here before then, so I don't know. That is my answer, but hopefully you find your answer. Maybe tag Parker. I'm sure he could tell you a time. Tag Parker and Brandon in a post, and I'm sure they would be able to tell you. Anyways, Haas Josh, double shout out. Thanks. Hey, there you go. Here's a triple shout out. I think probably even more than triple. I feel like I've been reading quite a few of your comments, but you've had some good ones in there. So had to throw you in there. But that is all I have for you guys, folks. Of course, real quick before you guys go, hit the like button on YouTube. Hit that like button. Hit subscribe as well if you're not already subscribed. I'm not sure what you're doing if you haven't already subscribed, but we are trying to expand and keep on doing bigger things. For those of you who have been tuning in to, I am going to be co-hosting the SEC show over on SEC at the Voice of College Football on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Of course, yesterday I had an injury that kept me out of the game, literally. So I was not able to get that started. Blake Lane, who's the host of Auburn at the Voice of College Football, good friend of mine, him and I are going to be hosting that show, talking about the Oklahoma Sooners, the Auburn Tigers, and every other SEC team. And we're going to be talking about a lot of fun stuff. We've got a lot of fun stuff planned for that one. I'm very excited to get to it. It's just that, of course, couldn't get it started yesterday when we wanted to get it started. So apologies on my end for being careless and hurting myself. But we will get that show started. So go over, search for SEC at the Voice of College Football. Subscribe to that channel. Hit the notification bell so you know when we go live. I want to be able to get there. Bishop, I apologize again. I'm sure that if you're sitting there on hold, then I'm sure there was others also on hold. I will try to hit refresh on this thing a little bit more next week. I apologize. The first couple of times I felt like everything went smooth for this call-in system, and maybe this isn't the right system to go with. So I apologize. We'll get to calls next week. I promise next week I will hit refresh constantly until we see names pop up there. And so, yeah, as of right now, I just didn't. There was nothing that popped up. I wish I could just show you my screen to show it. I just don't think it'll show up on camera very well. But I will get to calls next week. I promise. Apologize for that. Maybe that's on my fault. But I will blame the computer because it's easier for me to blame the computer. But I haven't seen any names popping up on the queue. So apologies to anybody who did call in. Next week, I guess I know better to just hit that refresh button a couple of times while we're talking. I'm seeing we had callers. We had 5 different callers call in. Guys, I apologize. That is on me. I will hit refresh next week and keep on hitting refresh until we see those calls come in. So, anyways, until next week, we'll have to wait. Maybe on Tuesday we'll run our call-in show on Tuesday if everything works out. If I'm in a hotel room, I can't really promise to do that because I don't have good connections there. But we'll get there, I promise. Apologies, especially to you, Bishop. You're a loyal listener, so I appreciate it so much. But guys, that's all we've got for today. I want to let you all know that we will be live on next Tuesday as long as everything goes well. And then, of course, join me and Blake over on SEC at the Voice of College Football on Wednesday, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. And then again on Thursday, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time for our live call-in show one more time. But again, appreciate everybody so much for tuning in, for jumping in the live chat, for all the love, all the support. We'll catch you guys next time. Boomer.